You're now watching CalTv.
Good afternoon and welcome to CalTv. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jim Caselli. The topic of today's show is the new Power BI Procurement Card Transaction Report. Ajita Nimkar will be here with information on that, along with a demonstration followed by a question and answer session. Before we get to that, I'd like to give you a brief overview of Power BI. As you hopefully know, Fiscal is always trying to improve how the system works to support you, our users. Power BI represents one of the big ways we are doing that. So, what is Power BI? It's a business intelligence tool from Microsoft, that's where the BI comes from, that allows anyone with some basic training to explore a set of data interactively. You can think of it like a more advanced version of Excel. It's more complex for the person creating the report, but once a report is created, in many ways, it should be simpler for the user than a spreadsheet. We're moving reports to Power BI not only because it provides users with more speed and flexibility when they're running their own reports, but also because by taking some of the reporting burden off of PeopleSoft, it reduces competition for PeopleSoft resources, speeding that system up for all of its other uses. The goal over time is to move as many users to Power BI as we can for as many tasks as we can to continue to improve our services for users and increase the lifetime and usability of PeopleSoft. Our June episode of CalTv was all about Power BI. Senior Fiscal Advisor Joel Riphagen was with us and presented a Power BI overview and also shared some tips and tricks for those of you who have started to use it and would like to take advantage of its capabilities. You can find that episode on our YouTube channel. Now, before we get to Ajita's presentation, I'd like to let you know that if you have any questions regarding the P-Card transaction report during her presentation, please type them in the Q&A pod at any time. Now, here's Ajita. Good afternoon, Ajita. Thank you for being with us again. It's great to see you.
Good afternoon, Jim. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, we're always glad to have you. Now, I understand today you're going to be doing a demo on P-Card. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right, take it away.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Alrighty, so thank you everyone for joining today for CalTv. And I would like to introduce our new P-Card Power BI transactions report. So this report provides the details of P-Card transactions exceeding $7,500 for an individual merchant, as well as $2,500 per transaction. So the report will help departments to maintain compliance with the Consolidated State Contracting Manual and statute for when a purchase order or PO is required. So as you all know, a PO is required for all P-Card transactions valued $2,500 and above and all leveraged procurement agreement purchases. When purchases are to an individual supplier that have reached $7,500, within the particular calendar year, a purchase order must be issued for the next purchases. Depending upon any dollar amount, the purchase order has to be created. Now, for this P-Card transaction report, now it is listed in the Overview tab. So this is the P-Card transactions report overview. And further down, it has 3 more dashboards: transaction details by amount, transaction details by merchant, as well as transaction details by chart field. I will explain those later as we move further. Once you open up the P-Card transaction report overview, you will see 4 dashboards here created. The business unit is defaulted always to your business unit, and the year will be defaulted to current year. If you want to see any previous year data, you can always drill down and go to the any year you would like to. For example, I don't want to see the current year data. I want to see the 2021 year data. So I can simply go ahead and change it to 2021, and all the transactions listed for 2021 will be displayed. Now let's go back to the current year data. As you can see here, merchants by amount. All of these merchants, doing business or department 7760 has created purchase order will be displayed here. These are also color coded. For the merchants where the total spent amount is between $0 to $4,999 are highlighted as blue. For purchases or merchants spent the dollar amount 5,000 to 7,499 is listed as yellow, and for $7,500 or more for that calendar year is listed as red. As you can go down here, you can see that color coding, and you can click on any of the merchant and you should be able to see their transactions spent in that particular calendar year. As you can see, this dashboard is completely blank because there is no transaction amounting to $2,500 or more. However, when you can see over here for this tab, you can immediately see the transactions which are $2,500 or more for this particular merchant. Furthermore, when you go to the transactions amounting to $2,500 or more, you can see the color coding here as well. Red indicates no PO. That means this transaction requires a PO to be created in the system. The transactions which are in black, that means they all have POs. Now let's go to the voucher status by business unit. As you can see here, the voucher statuses are paid and not selected for payment. So you can definitely indicate how many vouchers are already paid and how many vouchers are not yet selected for payment. Furthermore, when you go to the transaction statuses by business unit, you can see the statuses as closed, staged, and verified. That means how many transactions are closed, how many transactions are in staged status, and how many transactions are in verified status. If you can simply click over here for the staged transaction, you will again get the data for all the staged transactions in the system, which are not yet reconciled. Further, if you click on verify, you will get the data on how many transactions are verified in the system. Currently, we do not have any data to show for this current fiscal year. Let's go furthermore and search for a different business unit. So as you can see here, now you can see the color coding more prominently. This particular BU has only one merchant where they have spent $7,500 or more. This particular merchant is between the threshold of 5,000 to 7,499. And all of these merchants are below $5,000. As you can see, they have only two transactions, which are amounting to $2,500 or more. And this red indicates that there is no PO created for these particular transactions. So this will help the department to identify which transactions are missing the purchase orders, which are amounting to $2,500 or more, and they can comply with the policies. Furthermore, you can reach out to DGS for all policy related questions. Now let's move on to the transaction details valued at $2,500 or more dashboard. Here you can see there are different parameters than the overview tab. Business unit, department, merchant, supplier ID, supplier name, year, statement status, and PO ID. You can filter down more further as you want to, if you want to see any particular transaction or for particular merchant or a supplier. Yet again, this will be defaulted to the current fiscal year. You can always drill down and make selection for the year you want to see the data for. As you can see here, these are the only transaction displayed here where the transaction threshold amount is $2,500 or more. If we can select the statement status as approved, only approved transactions will be shown over here. You can get all the details here further down as, the business unit, department name, merchant name, the supplier ID associated with it, the supplier name, supplier location ID, the managing account, the transaction number for the P-card transaction, then which is the line number for that particular transaction, the transaction date, as well as the bill date, what is the transaction status, what is the amount of that P-card transaction, as well as the PO ID, if that transaction has PO ID or not. PO line number, buyer name, what is the budget status on the PO, as well as what is the voucher ID. As you can see, since these are only approved transactions, this does not have any voucher ID created yet. Now let's go on closed transactions. So if you can see the closed transactions, you can further see the voucher IDs for all of those transactions. So this is the main thing for the transaction details valued at $2,500 and more. Now let's go to one particular business unit. And I'm going to see the data only for 8880. As you saw in the overview tab, there are only 2 transactions amounting to $2,500 and more, and these 2 transactions are displayed over here. We also saw there was no PO ID for one transaction, even though the amount was greater than $2,500. This is also indicated here. However, there is a second transaction which has the PO ID as well as the voucher ID created for it. So this is how you can determine which transactions are required to create a PO. Now further down, let's move on to the P-card transaction details by merchant. So let's go ahead and also select the particular business unit. Here, there are different parameters: business unit, department, merchant, supplier ID, supplier name, year, and statement status. The business unit and the year is required parameters. As you can see, I have selected 7760 and the fiscal year is the current year. This report consists almost the same columns as the previous one: business unit, department name, merchant name, supplier ID, supplier name, supplier ID location, managing account, transaction number, transaction line number, transaction date, bill date, transaction line status, amount, PO ID, PO line number, budget status, and voucher ID. Furthermore, if you want to select the particular merchant and see how much you have spent for that particular merchant in the current calendar year, you can always do the right click and select the drill through and go to the cumulative amount details by merchant. Once you click on this tab, for that particular merchant, all the transaction will be shown regardless of the dollar amount. And once this report is generated, you can clearly see how much amount you have spent for this particular merchant for the current calendar year. And now you can immediately see the cumulative amount column that for this year, until now, you have spent total amount of $28,562. As you can see, the PO ID column is blank, which indicates there is no PO created for any of these transactions. However, as per the policies explained earlier, whenever the department reaches $7,500 for any particular merchant for any calendar year, a PO has to be created regardless of the dollar amount. So in order to be in compliance with the policy, the department should start creating the purchase order starting from the transaction on 1/31/2022. And for all the remaining transactions, the PO has to be created because they have spent $7,500 and more for this particular merchant. Once you have to go back, you can just click on this button and you can be redirected to the previous page. I can again state that all the policy related questions should go to DGS. Now, furthermore, let's select any other supplier, again drill through, and the cumulative amount details by merchant. Again, for this one, the same data will be shown regardless of the dollar amount, total transactions for this particular calendar year. It takes a little bit of time to generate this report. As you can see here, now the cumulative amount totals are already generated and the threshold amount was already exceeded here at this transaction line. So departments should be creating the purchase order for all of these transactions. Now let's go back and select a different unit. So now let's see the transaction data for 8880. Again, I will be going through the same thing for the drill down option. I will select the merchant and show the cumulative amount details by merchant. As you can see here, they have not spent a lot of amount or money on this particular merchant. So there is no need to create the purchase order, as well as the transactions are not amounting to $2,500 or more. So this is for P-card transaction details by merchant. Now let's move on to our last dashboard. This is the P-card transaction details by chart fields. As you can see that there are a lot of filtering options here, and you can filter the data as you want or as there is a need. Again, this will be defaulted to the business unit, whatever business unit you will have access to, as well as the current calendar year. So that data will be shown always. This report is similar to our query, that is a ZZ US Bank Statement query, which is used in Fiscal. So this dashboard will provide you the same result as the query, ZZ US Bank Statement query. And the columns are also the same used for that query. So you will be able to filter the data as per the need. As you can go further down, you can see here there are more columns added and just not the voucher ID. There is a voucher date, invoice ID, invoice amount, and the payment status. So these columns are also added for this particular report. Additionally, there is one new dashboard which will be coming up very, very soon that will provide you the transaction details for the merchants which are $7,500 and more, which have already reached that threshold. So every single time, department does not have to do the drill down here. So the additional dashboard will give you that information where you can directly see all the merchants which have already reached that threshold. So this is the overall for the P-card transaction details by merchant. Now let's go to About page one more time. So this is the P-card transaction report, and all of these information is provided here. And the other reports or queries that can be used to validate data is this ZZ US Bank Statement. Furthermore, there is other information about the statutes for the reference. So for the government code, users can directly click over here and it will take you to the page for these sections, as well as the public contract code. Again, same here. You can simply click over here and it will take you to that particular section. And if you see any issues for this report, or if you want to see how you can get the access to this report, please reach out to the Fiscal Service Center. And that concludes our demo for the P-card transaction report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ajita. That's great as always. I got to tell you that About page, that's pretty special with all that information for finding out everything you need to know. That's great. That's a good addition.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks again for being with us today.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Okay, once again, thanks to Ajita. Of course, that was taped a couple of days ago, but Ajita is here with us live today, and she has a couple of colleagues with her. Ajita, would you like to introduce your colleagues?
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. And I have here with me Tejaswini Chintawar. She is PO lead from our ESC, and you can definitely send out the questions or the queries you have related to this P-card report to her. I also have Carl West here from DGS. So if we have any questions related to the policies and how to comply, we can always reach out to him. So they both are here in this meeting. So if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Okay, we do have some questions here. So let's start with this one. How do I get access to this report?
Oh, that is so simple, Jim. So you can request the Power BI PO viewer role from ISS in order to have access to this report.
Okay, and the next question, if a user has multiple business unit access, can they see the report for their other BUs too?
Absolutely. Their access in Power BI will work the same as in PeopleSoft. So all BUs for which you already have access to in PeopleSoft, you can also see that in Power BI. It will be defaulted to one BU when you open the report and of course to the current calendar year. But then you can always select another business unit for which you want to see the data for.
Okay, and our next question, can these reports be downloaded?
Yes, of course. Each and every dashboard, you can see the download button on it, and you can download the data to the Excel.
All right, our next question. What other Power BI PO reports are available in Fiscal?
Yes, so there is another report that is an encumbering purchase order report is already available since few months in Power BI, as well as this P-card Power BI report is now available. And we have another upcoming report that is a procurement Power BI report. This report will show all the past purchases for the agencies.
All right, here's the next question. Where do I access this from my Fiscal homepage?
So once you have the access to the Power BI report, it will guide you on how to log in and how to access this report. So you will get the instructions with all of those detailed information from FSC.
All right, our next question. Is it common to create a purchase order after the payment? The viewer says, I thought that POs would need to be required and executed before a payment is made.
That is correct. Unfortunately, there is no mechanism in the system as of now where you can create the purchase orders later. You do have to reconcile them and link the P-card transactions to the PO at that time. So if you have already reconciled the transactions and made payments, as of now, you cannot go back and create the PO for the same.
All right. And it's the next question. Once a transaction is approved, they will be closed and vouchers are created automatically. That's a question.
Yes, it will be. So once the transaction is approved, we have an overnight batch process, which will pick up all of those approved transactions with the valid chart fields as well as the valid budget check, and voucher will be created with all of those transactions.
Okay, next question. Is the 7,500 threshold set for the calendar year or the fiscal year? Sorry, I always say fiscal when I see that word now. Calendar year or fiscal year?
Yes, so the $7,500 threshold is selected for per calendar year, but I would like to direct this question to Carl. He is already in the meeting. Carl, please, you want to go ahead? You're on mute, Carl.
There you go, Carl.
Thank you very much. Yes, no, actually, you actually answered the question. It is actually based on a calendar year. There's no.
Okay.
And is there any section you can refer them to?
As far as the section of the policy?
Mm-hmm.
that the question? So as far as the policy goes, is the 700, I don't have that. We will have that information. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we will have that information available within the actual communication and information on the instructions. We will cite the policies and the regulations that this refers to.
Sounds great. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Our next question.
I would like to add just one point to that. So the $7,500 amount that we are talking about is the cumulative amount for a particular merchant per calendar year. It's not a per transaction amount. It's a cumulative amount for that merchant.
That is correct.
Okay, and again, I have two questions here asking to repeat what role is needed to review this report.
It is a Power BI PO viewer role. We can possibly put that in the chat.
Okay. On the P card transaction report, can you modify year to calendar year to confuse users between fiscal versus calendar?
So, I mean, let me see if I have understood the question correctly. So you think that we should write down as a calendar year instead of just the current year or year? Is that the question?
It says, can you modify the year to calendar year?
Sure, absolutely. I'll make a note of that and we can get that done. Yes.
Okay, and we have one more question here. SCM 21902.4 states, in quotes, when $7,500 is reached within calendar year, a purchase document must be issued for the next purchase. It does not say must be issued for all subsequent purchases. Is there any comment on there? There's really not a question. It was just a statement.
Yeah, I believe they're just referring to the SCM2 as far as for the information of the audience.
Okay.
So there's no question there. But again, I think we will have the regulations cited and the SCM volumes that refer to the numbers that we're issuing on this report.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions we have. So thank you all very much for being with us today. And that's our show for today. So once again, thanks to Ajita. A special thanks to Tejaswini and Carl West for being with us as well. And if you would like to see this or any of our Fiscal TV shows, you can find them on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to let your colleagues know about us. And from everyone here at Fiscal TV, thanks for joining us. We hope to see you in September for our next issue of Fiscal TV.